Monica Harris collapsed on the kitchen floor. The sound of glass shattering echoed through the small house, sharp and final. Red juice spread across the tiles, and in the frightened eyes of her 6-year-old son, it looked like blood. For years, Monica had carried everything alone. She worked double shifts, skipped meals, and smiled through exhaustion, all to give her boy a life better than hers. There was no partner to share the burden, no family to lean on. Every bill, every sickness, every night of fear, she faced it with only her son by her side. But the body has limits. And that night, it finally gave out. Caleb's cries filled the silence. "Mommy, please wake up!" His little hands shook as he tried to shake her, his tears falling onto the cold tiles. There was no one to hear him. No neighbor, no friend. Only the echo of his own panic. In desperation, he grabbed the phone and dialed. Not 911, not a doctor. A wrong number. And the voice that answered belonged to the man Monica never wanted her son to know. The man who had once abandoned her. The man who was now a billionaire. What will happen when a forgotten past collides with the present? Subscribe now and share your guess. Will he step in to save them, or turn his back once again? Caleb's voice shook as he pressed the phone to his ear. Tears streamed down his face. "There's blood everywhere," he cried. His small hands trembled, his words tangled with sobs. The red juice spread wider across the tiles, soaking into his socks. To him, it looked like blood. Thick, dark, endless. On the other end, Alexander Cole leaned back in his leather chair. His tone was clipped, controlled. "Slow down, kid. Who is this?" He thought it was a prank call, some child messing with numbers, but the fear in Caleb's voice was raw. "My mommy. She fell. She won't wake up." The boy gasped for breath between words. "There's blood. Please help us." Alexander frowned. His office was lined with glass walls overlooking the city skyline. He was in the middle of a meeting, his assistant waiting at the door with files. Yet, something about the child's voice pierced through. "What's your name?" Alexander asked. "Caleb. Caleb Harris. I'm 6. The name meant nothing. But then the boy whispered another. "My mommy's name is Monica." Alexander froze. His hand tightened around the phone. That name, Monica. A name he hadn't heard in 7 years. Alexander shot up from his chair, startling his assistant. His voice turned sharp. "Where are you calling from, Caleb?" The boy stammered. 24, Maple Street. The blue house, the one with the crooked mailbox. Please, hurry. My mommy won't wake up." Alexander's pulse hammered. He didn't wait. His other hand reached for his cell, dialing emergency services with practiced precision. "A woman has collapsed," he barked. "Send an ambulance to that address now." And the operator confirmed, but Alexander was already moving. His conference room doors swung open. Suited men sat around a polished table, screens glowing with charts and numbers. The Tokyo investors stared, confused. "I'm done here," Alexander said coldly. His assistant followed, panicked. "Sir, the presentation—" "Cancel it." He didn't look back. His mind was already in that small kitchen with broken glass and a child's cries. The contrast was jarring. Moments ago, he was surrounded by luxury, power, the endless hum of business. Now, all he could picture was Monica Harris, lying alone on a linoleum floor. 7 years of silence, 7 years of distance. And suddenly, everything was breaking open with one desperate phone call. At the little blue house, Caleb clutched the phone to his chest. The operator's voice guided him through shaky breaths. "Unlock the door, sweetheart. The helpers are coming." He dragged a wooden stool across the floor, climbing to reach the chain lock. His small fingers fumbled, slipping on the metal. Tears blurred his vision, but he kept trying. "I can do it. Mommy needs me." At last, the chain slid free. The deadbolt resisted, but with both hands he twisted until it clicked. A heavy knock rattled the door. "Paramedics, open up!" "I unlocked it," Caleb called out, his voice cracking. He stumbled back as 2 figures pushed inside, carrying bright red bags and crisp uniforms. One knelt to meet his eyes. "Are you the one who called?" He nodded hard. "She's in the kitchen. Please hurry." The paramedics rushed to Monica's side, their voices calm but urgent. Caleb followed at a distance, hugging himself tight. His heart pounded so loud it hurt. Through it all, the phone still buzzed in his hand. Alexander's voice was there, steady and deep. "You did good, Caleb. You were brave. I'm proud of you." For the first time, the boy felt less alone. Alexander stood at the tall windows of his office, staring at the city without seeing it. The boy's words echoed in his ears. Monica. Blood. Alone. He tightened his grip on the phone until his knuckles whitened. His assistant appeared again, papers in hand. "Sir, your flight to Tokyo. Cancel it. Get the jet to Portland, now." The woman blinked, startled. "Portland? But I said now." His voice left no room for argument. As his staff scrambled, Alexander sank briefly into his chair. His chest felt tight, his thoughts racing backward. He remembered the last time he saw Monica. Her eyes filled with hurt. The argument that ended with slammed doors. She was pregnant then, though he didn't know. Or maybe he refused to see. 7 years. He had buried her memory under contracts and skyscrapers. But her name still had power. One word from a child's trembling lips, and the walls he had built crumbled. He rose, grabbing his jacket. "Keep my calls off," he ordered. "No interruptions." As the elevator doors closed, he whispered the name once more. "Monica." The private jet awaited, and for the first time in years, Alexander Cole felt unsteady. The sterile smell of a disinfectant filled the air. Monica lay behind closed doors, machines humming in rhythm with her fragile breaths. Caleb sat in the pediatric waiting room, legs swinging from a chair too big for him. His eyes were swollen from crying, his small hands gripping the stuffed bear a nurse had given him. Every voice in the corridor made him flinch. He kept looking at the door, hoping for news, dreading silence. Then heavy footsteps echoed on the linoleum. A tall man in a dark suit appeared, his presence commanding even in this place of chaos. Alexander scanned the room until his gaze locked on the child. The resemblance struck him like a physical blow. The curve of the boy's jaw, the shape of his hands, the way his hair curled in soft waves. It was impossible not to see himself at that age. Caleb stared back, cautious but curious. His big blue eyes shimmered with the same piercing shade Alexander saw every morning in the mirror. For the first time, Alexander's world of numbers and deals faltered. He wasn't looking at just a frightened boy. He was looking at blood, at lineage, at a truth he could no longer deny. Alexander sat down slowly, lowering himself to the child's level. He didn't speak right away. He only looked. Those eyes. Sharp blue, edged with innocence, shadowed by fear. His own eyes reflected back at him. Caleb tilted his head, studying the stranger with unusual focus for a child. "Are you the man from the phone?" His voice was soft, almost a whisper. Alexander cleared his throat. "Yes, I'm Alexander." The boy clutched his bear tighter. He glanced toward the hallway where nurses moved quickly. "You stayed with me. On the phone. Thank you." The words landed heavy. Gratitude, pure and unfiltered, from a child who had no idea of their bond. Alexander wanted to explain, to confess, but the truth burned against his tongue. 7 years of silence could not be undone in a single sentence. Instead, he nodded. "You were brave, Caleb. Braver than most grown men I know." Caleb's eyes searched his face again as though trying to solve a puzzle. The line of the nose, the set of the chin, familiar without knowing why. Alexander felt the weight of recognition pressing in. This wasn't chance. It wasn't coincidence. It was blood calling to blood. The waiting room quieted as night settled over the hospital. Caleb curled into the chair beside Alexander, his small body weary. The bear rested on his lap, one arm missing from too much love. Alexander leaned closer. "Do you like stories?" Caleb nodded without hesitation. "Mom reads to me every night, but she can't now." His voice cracked on the last word. "I can read to you," Alexander offered. It felt foreign, strange, yet right. He picked up a children's book from the side table, the pages worn from countless visits. His deep voice softened as he began. Caleb listened, eyes heavy but focused. Every few lines, he asked a question, sharp and curious. Alexander answered with patience he didn't know he possessed. When the story ended, Caleb looked up. "Do you think Mommy will wake up soon?" Alexander's chest tightened. He wanted to promise, he wanted to lie, but he spoke carefully. "The doctors are helping her. She's strong, just like you." Caleb's small hand rested against his sleeve. The touch was light, but it pierced through steel walls Alexander had built for years. Something unnamed, something paternal, began to stir. A nurse entered, her expression calm but tired. She crouched to Caleb's level. "Your mom is stable now, sweetheart. She's sleeping. It may take time before she wakes up." Relief washed over Caleb. His eyes filled again, but this time with hope. He whispered, "Thank you." Alexander stood tall, his jaw set. The nurse turned to him. "Visiting hours are over, sir. You may come back tomorrow." But Alexander didn't move. His gaze followed this corridor that led to Monica's room. 7 years had separated them. 7 years of absence, of silence. And yet here he was, closer than ever, unwilling to leave. "I'll stay," he said quietly, "as long as it takes." The nurse hesitated, then softened. "You can remain in the family lounge, but the boy needs rest." Alexander nodded. He turned back to Caleb, brushing the curls from his forehead with surprising gentleness. "Get some sleep. I'll be right here when you wake up." The child's trust came silently, in the way he closed his eyes without fear. Alexander sat down, staring at the clock on the wall. For the first time in his adult life, time no longer belonged to him. It belonged to them. Morning light filtered through high windows. Caleb stirred awake, blinking at Alexander's steady presence beside him. But before he could speak, a woman in a gray suit entered. Clipboard in hand, sharp eyes taking in every detail. "Mr. Cole?" Her tone was professional, guarded. "I'm with Child Services. We need to discuss temporary guardianship." Alexander straightened. "The boy is safe with me." The woman's brow arched. "Safe, perhaps. But legally? You have no rights, no proof. You are, at this moment, a stranger." Caleb sat up, confusion written on his face. "He helped me. He stayed with me." The worker offered a tight smile, and that was kind. "But until his mother is conscious, decisions about Caleb's care fall to us." Alexander's voice dropped low, steel beneath control. "I will not let him go into foster care." The room tensed. The woman scribbled notes, unmoved. "We'll see. Background checks must be completed, hotel accommodations verified. Until then, you may visit, but you do not decide." Caleb looked between them, small fists clenched. His voice rose, breaking the silence. "I want to stay with him." The worker paused. Even she could not ignore the child's plea. The morning passed in slow silence. Nurses checked monitors. Machines hummed behind the curtain where Monica slept. Caleb sat on the floor of the waiting room with crayons and paper, his tongue pressed between his teeth in concentration. He drew a picture of his mother, smiling, standing tall, holding his hand. Beside them, he added a man, taller, with eyes like his own. He shaded a suit around the figure and added a crooked smile. When the drawing was done, he held it up proudly. "For Mommy. When she wakes up, she'll see we're all together." Alexander watched from the chair across the room. The paper trembled in his hand when Caleb showed it to him. The innocence of the image pierced deeper than any accusation could. 7 years, wasted, 7 birthdays missed, 7 Christmas mornings spent apart. He reached out and traced the lines of the drawing with one finger. His throat ached. "She will love it, Caleb. She'll keep it forever." The boy smiled, satisfied. He folded the picture carefully and tucked it into his pocket, safe for later. Alexander leaned back, covering his mouth with his hand. For the first time in years, regret burned hotter than pride. By evening, the hospital released Caleb into Alexander's care for the night. The boy clung to his drawing as Alexander guided him through the revolving doors of a luxury hotel. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Guests in tailored suits drifted past, their perfumes sharp and unfamiliar. Caleb's sneakers squeaked against polished stone. His wide eyes followed every detail, both odd and uneasy. Upstairs, the suite stretched larger than their entire house. Plush carpets muted every step. The city sparkled outside a wall of glass. Alexander gestured toward the view. "You can see the whole skyline from here." But Caleb only frowned. "Where's the kitchen table? Mommy and I always eat at the table." Alexander hesitated. The suite had no table small enough, no warmth in its shine. "We'll make it work," he murmured. Caleb placed his bear on the massive bed. It looked tiny against silk pillows. He turned to Alexander. "I miss home." The contrast pressed down heavy. Riches filled the room, but it could not buy comfort. Not for the boy, not for the man watching him. For the first time, Alexander felt the emptiness of his world. Wealth meant nothing if it could not fill the silence. The suite's bathroom filled with steam as Caleb splashed in the tub. His laughter echoed off marble tiles, the first sound of joy all day. Alexander knelt nearby, rolling up his sleeves, steadying toy boats with clumsy hands. When the water cooled, he wrapped the boy in a towel far too large, carrying him into the bedroom. Caleb's damp curls stuck to his forehead. He climbed into bed with his bear and the folded drawing still clutched in one hand. "Do you want a story?" Alexander asked, uncertain. Yes, Mommy always tells one. Alexander reached for a book from the bedside table. His voice stumbled at first, unused to such softness, but Caleb listened, wide-eyed, interrupting with questions that forced Alexander to smile. The story stretched longer than the pages themselves. When the final line came, Caleb's eyes fluttered. He whispered, "Good night. Thank you." Alexander sat in the quiet, the child's breathing steady now. He felt the weight of responsibility settle across his chest, heavier than any corporate empire. For the first time, Alexander Cole had put a child to bed. Not just any child, his child. And the feeling, though foreign, felt dangerously close to belonging. Long after Caleb had fallen asleep, Alexander sat in the dark suite. The city pulsed outside, a blur of neon and headlights. Yet all he could see was Monica's face 7 years ago, filled with anger and hurt. He remembered the last words they spoke, how she begged him to trust her, how he turned away, the sound of the door closing behind him. Back then, ambition drowned out everything. Deals, mergers, the next step up the ladder. He told himself love was a distraction, that she would only slow him down. Now he saw what he had missed. Monica had carried a child alone. She had carried his child. Every holiday, every sickness, every milestone, alone. Regret coiled through him, sharp and unrelenting. He pressed his hand against his forehead. Would she ever forgive him? Would she even want him near? He turned to the bed where Caleb slept, curled around his bear. The boy breathed evenly, trusting the man at his side without question. Alexander whispered into the dark, "I should have been here. Both of you deserved better." His words vanished into the silence, but the ache in his chest remained, heavy and unyielding. The next morning, sunlight streamed across the suite. Caleb sat cross-legged on the carpet, arranging a small pile of stones he had taken from his pocket. Smooth pebbles, tiny quartz pieces, each one carefully chosen. Alexander crouched down. "You collect rocks?" Caleb nodded eagerly. "Mommy says I find treasures where no one else looks. I have more at home. This one is my favorite." He held up a speckled stone, eyes shining with pride. Alexander's breath caught. He reached into his own briefcase, pulling out a polished obsidian paperweight. "I used to collect them too, when I was your age." Caleb's jaw dropped. "Really?" "Yes. My father thought it was silly, but I kept them. Every stone had a story." The boy placed his rock beside Alexander's. 2 generations, side by side. The resemblance was more than physical now. It was written in small habits, quiet passions passed down without words. Caleb grinned. "Then we're the same." Alexander's throat tightened. He nodded, though speaking was hard. The boy's joy was simple, unguarded, yet it bound them in a way no DNA test ever could. For the first time, Alexander felt it fully. He was not just a stranger, he was a father. Monica's eyelids fluttered open under the pale hospital light. Her body felt heavy, her throat dry, every muscle aching. For a moment, confusion clouded her thoughts. Machines beeped softly, tubes brushed her skin. Then her gaze shifted, and she saw him, Alexander Cole, standing at the foot of her bed, shoulders rigid, eyes locked on hers. Her chest tightened. Memories struck like lightning. The night he left, the years of silence, the long road of raising a child alone. Tears welled before she could stop them. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You're not here. You can't be." Alexander stepped closer, voice low, almost breaking. "Monica." She turned her head sharply, tears streaking her face. 7 years. "I begged for you. I needed you. And you vanished." Her voice rose with each word, fury rising from the depths of exhaustion. Alexander's throat worked, but no sound came at first. He looked at the fragile woman before him, the same woman who once laughed in his arms, now shattered by years of hardship. The silence between them was thick, filled with 7 years of pain neither could escape. Monica turned away, sobbing quietly, and Alexander finally knew the depth of what he had lost. Monica's tears burned as she forced herself to look at him again. "You left me, pregnant, alone. Do you know what that felt like? To wonder if I'd even survive?" Her voice cracked, raw, shaking with anger. "Every appointment, every night I woke up sick, every time I thought our child deserved a father. Where were you?" Alexander stepped closer, his own eyes red. "I didn't know. I swear to you, Monica, I didn't know you carried my child. I thought you walked away." She laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "I walked away. You never came looking, not once. Don't tell me you didn't know. You didn't care." His chest heaved. He wanted to argue, to shout back. But instead, he whispered, "You're right. I failed you. I failed him. But let me try now, please. Just give me the chance to fix what I broke." Monica shook her head. "You can't buy back 7 years. You can't erase the nights he asked why his father didn't love him." Her words hit harder than any blow. Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. For the first time, the man who conquered empires had no defense left but the truth of his regret. Silence stretched until Alexander finally spoke. His voice was quiet, heavy with hesitation. "Monica, something was wrong back then. I tried to reach you. Letters, calls. They never came back. I thought you wanted nothing to do with me." Her brows furrowed, confusion flickering in her weary eyes. "I never got anything. Not a call. Not a note." "I sent them," Alexander insisted, almost to himself. "Dozens. I even went to your apartment once, but it was empty. And then, nothing. My mother said you had moved on, that you wanted freedom." Monica blinked, the words sinking in. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Alexander stepped closer, desperation in every line of his face. "I should have fought harder. I should have found you. But I swear, it wasn't by choice. Someone kept us apart." Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. The possibility shook her. For years, anger was her armor. Now doubt cracked it, leaving her exposed. She turned away, tears blurring her vision. "Even if that's true, the damage is done." Alexander lowered his gaze, but the seed had been planted. The truth was deeper than either of them had believed. The door creaked open. Caleb slipped inside, clutching his bear and his folded drawing. His small eyes lit up at the sight of his mother awake. "Mommy!" He rushed to her side, climbing onto the bed with care. Monica wrapped him weakly in her arms, holding on as though he might disappear. Tears filled her eyes again, but softer now. Then Caleb looked over at Alexander. "He stayed with me, Mommy, all night. He told me stories. He helped." Monica stiffened, torn between gratitude and old wounds. She stroked her son's hair. "That was kind of him, but—" Caleb interrupted, his voice firm for the first time. "I want to be with him, too. He's my dad, isn't he?" The room stilled. Monica's heart clenched. She wanted to protect him, to shield him from pain, but the boy's innocent certainty cut through every defense. "Please, Mommy," he whispered, "just let me spend time with him. He makes me feel safe." Monica met Alexander's gaze. His eyes held no arrogance now, only a plea. Her heart wavered, torn between fear of repeating the past and her child's undeniable longing. For the first time, the choice wasn't hers alone. Monica's hand shook as she brushed Caleb's hair back. "Just one night," she whispered. "Only one." Caleb's face lit up, relief spilling into joy. "Thank you, Mommy." He hugged her tight before turning to Alexander. "Did you hear that? I can stay with you." Alexander's throat tightened. He nodded, struggling for words. "Yes, we'll make it a good night." Monica's eyes burned into his. "Don't make promises you can't keep. He's not a deal. He's not a project. He's our son. If you disappear again, you'll break him, and I won't let that happen." Alexander's voice dropped, firm and steady. "I won't leave him. Not again, I swear it." She studied him for a long moment, searching for cracks, for the man who once chose ambition over love. Instead, she found eyes raw with regret and something new, resolve. "Fine," she said at last, sinking back against the pillow. "But if you fail him, Alexander, you fail both of us." Alexander exhaled slowly, the weight of the agreement pressing deep. As Caleb nestled beside his mother, clutching her hand, Alexander knew this fragile trust was a gift, a chance, and he would not waste it. Morning light poured through the hotel windows. Alexander moved carefully in the kitchen area, unsure of himself with the frying pan. Eggs sizzled unevenly, toast burned on one side, but the boy at the table didn't complain. Caleb swung his legs under the chair, smiling at every attempt. "You're not as good as Mommy," he admitted, grinning through a mouthful of toast. Alexander laughed softly, setting down orange juice. "I'll take that as motivation." After breakfast, Alexander bought a small bouquet from the lobby florist. He handed it to Caleb. "These are for your mother. You should be the one to give them." The boy's eyes lit up. He sniffed the petals and held them close, proud of his mission. On the way back to the hospital, he chattered without pause. He told Alexander about his school, about the cracked swing in their yard, about how his mom sometimes skipped dinner so he could have more. Every word pulled at Alexander's chest. He listened, silent, taking in the details of a life he had never known. Each sentence was a reminder of what Monica had carried alone, and each smile from Caleb deepened his resolve not to miss another moment. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of machines. Monica stirred when Caleb rushed in, clutching both his folded drawing and the bouquet. He climbed gently onto the bed, careful not to disturb the wires. "Mommy," he whispered, his voice full of hope. "I made this for you." He unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The picture showed the three of them together, holding hands under a sun too bright to ignore. Monica's breath caught. Her fingers brushed the crayon lines, her tears spilling before she could stop them. "Oh, Caleb," her voice broke. "It's beautiful. And these are flowers." He placed them in her lap. "Daddy helped me." The word hung in the air like a stone dropped in water. Monica's eyes flicked to Alexander, standing silent near the door. Her tears fell harder, both from joy at her son's innocence and from the ache of a truth too complicated to name. She pulled Caleb close, kissing his hair. "Thank you, baby. This means everything to me." Alexander watched, chest heavy, struck by the simple purity of the moment. A child's gift had done what his power never could, bring her to tears of love. Later, when Caleb stepped out with a nurse, Alexander approached Monica's bed. His voice was quiet but steady. "You shouldn't have to worry about bills or doctors. Let me take care of everything. Medical expenses, school, the house, whatever you need." Monica's eyes hardened. "No?" He frowned. "Why not? You're exhausted, Monica. You've carried this alone long enough. Let me help." She shook her head, her voice sharp despite her weakness. "Because it comes with a price. Because you'll think you've bought your way back into our lives. I've survived without you for 7 years. I can survive without your money." Alexander's jaw tightened. "It's not about money. It's about responsibility." Her laugh was bitter. "Responsibility? Responsibility would have been showing up, not writing checks." The words struck deep. He lowered his eyes, realizing her pride wasn't arrogance. It was armor, built from years of standing alone. "I don't want your wealth," she whispered, softer now. "I want to know you'll stay. That's all." Alexander had no reply. For once, his fortune was worthless. The only currency that mattered was trust, and he had none left in her eyes. The room thickened with silence until Monica's hand clenched the sheet. Her voice trembled. If you really tried, then why didn't I hear from you?" Alexander's gaze darkened. "Because someone made sure you didn't." Her brows knit. "What do you mean?" He exhaled sharply. "It was my mother. She hated you. Said you were a distraction, that you'd ruin my future. I didn't want to believe it, but now, everything makes sense. The letters I sent, the calls that never reached you, she made sure they didn't." Monica's breath hitched. Tears spilled, hot and furious. "All these years, I thought you abandoned us." Her voice rose, echoing against the walls. 7 years of nights alone. 7 years watching Caleb ask where his father was, all because of her? Alexander stepped forward, guilt crushing his words. "Monica, I should have seen it. I should have fought harder. I failed both of you." She turned her face away, sobbing into her hands. The truth cut sharper than the lie ever had. Her pain filled the room, undeniable, and Alexander realized his own mother's betrayal had destroyed more than love. It had stolen years that could never be returned. The tears would not stop. Monica pressed her palms against her eyes, shaking with grief that went deeper than anger. 7 years lost, not because they chose it, but because someone else had stolen them. Alexander sank into the chair beside her bed, his face pale. "We were robbed," he whispered. "You, me, Caleb. 7 years we'll never get back." She turned her head, her eyes raw with sorrow. "I hated you. Every day, I hated you for leaving me. And now, I don't even know what to feel." He leaned forward, his voice breaking. "Hate me if you need to. I deserve it. But don't think I stopped loving you. I never did." Her lips trembled. "And I never stopped waiting for you, even when I told myself I was done." Their gazes locked, the weight of their shared loss pulling them together. For the first time, anger gave way to mourning. Not enemies, not lovers, just two people crushed by what could have been. Tears blurred both their eyes. The past was broken. But beneath the rubble, something still stirred. Fragile, painful, and alive. The door opened with a sudden push and Reed stepped in. His eyes landed first on Monica, pale but awake, then shifted sharply to Alexander. The tension thickened instantly. "Monica," Reed said, moving closer. "I came as soon as I heard. Are you all right?" She gave a small nod, but her gaze darted nervously between the two men. Alexander rose from the chair, his tone clipped. "And you are?" "Her friend," Reed replied firmly. "The one who's actually been here, the one who didn't vanish for 7 years." The words cut like glass. Monica flinched, but Alexander didn't look away. "I'm here now," Alexander said quietly, but the steel in his voice carried. Reed crossed his arms. "Too late. She doesn't need you. She has us." His glance toward Caleb made his meaning clear. The room grew charged, two men standing on opposite sides of Monica's fragile bed. Jealousy, guilt, and history collided in silence heavy enough to choke. Monica whispered, "Please, not here. Not now." But neither man moved. For Caleb, it was a fight between strangers. For Monica, it was the clash of past and present. For Alexander, it was a battle for redemption. The argument froze when Caleb walked in, clutching his bear. He stopped, sensing the tension, his wide eyes flicking between Reed and Alexander. "Why are you both angry?" he asked softly. No one answered. Reed shifted uncomfortably. Alexander pressed his lips together. Caleb tilted his head. "Do I have two dads now?" The words fell into the room like thunder, innocent but devastating. Monica's breath hitched. Reed's face paled. Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. Caleb stepped closer to the bed. "Because Uncle Reed helps Mommy, and he helps me, and he's here, but so is he." His small finger pointed at Alexander. Monica swallowed hard, her eyes filling again. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple." But the boy shook his head. "I just want everyone to be happy. I don't want Mommy to cry anymore." Silence followed, heavier than shouting. The innocence of a child had shattered their defenses. Reed turned away, jaw tight. Alexander's gaze dropped to the floor, and Monica, caught in the middle, held her son tighter. A single question had stripped them bare, and no one could answer without breaking a heart. The silence stretched until Alexander finally spoke. His voice was low, stripped of power. "Caleb, you have only one father, and it's me. I failed you. I failed your mother, but I swear I will never fail you again." Monica's lips parted, trembling. "Words don't undo years, Alexander. They don't erase pain." He stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Then let me prove it. Not with money, not with promises, with presence, with every day from here on." Her heart wavered, torn between anger and the raw truth in his voice. She wanted to reject him, to shut the door forever, but the sight of Caleb watching with hope softened her resolve. "Why should I trust you?" she whispered. "Because I finally see what matters. Not the empire, not the billions. Just this." He gestured to her, to Caleb, to the fragile family before him. "I want to fight for us." Monica's eyes blurred with tears. Her chest ached with conflicting emotions. Pain, longing, fear, and something that refused to die. For the first time she saw not the man who left, but the man who begged for a second chance. Caleb crawled onto the bed, nestling against his mother's side. Monica wrapped her arm around him, pressing her cheek to his curls. She closed her eyes, breathing in his warmth. Alexander stood a step away, his tall frame rigid, unsure if he belonged. His eyes softened as he watched them, mother and child, bound together by love he could never replace. Then Caleb looked up, his small hand reaching toward Alexander. "Come here." Alexander froze. Monica hesitated, her breath catching. But Caleb's innocent smile tugged at both their hearts. Slowly, Alexander moved closer, standing at the edge of the bed. Monica lifted her gaze, torn but unwilling to pull away. They stood there in silence, 3 lives, broken but together, fragile as glass. Alexander didn't reach for her. He didn't dare, but the unspoken truth filled the space between them. This wasn't healing, not yet, but it was a beginning. For the first time in 7 years, they were in the same room, mother, father, and child. Imperfect, uncertain, but no longer apart. The moment held like a fragile flame, small but bright against the weight of the past. Night had fallen over the hospital. Monica leaned back against her pillows, her strength not yet restored, but her spirit holding steady. Beside her, Caleb slept soundly, his small hand curled around the worn bear he never let go. Alexander sat nearby, quiet, watching over them both. His face carried no arrogance, no mask of power, only the weight of years lost and the fragile hope of years yet to come. The silence was filled not with distance, but with presence. After everything, they were here. Together. She had fought with her body. She had fought with her pride. She had fought with her past. And still, love, imperfect, fragile, but real, had given her the strength to endure. Caleb stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly. Monica brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, her touch tender. Her eyes lifted briefly toward Alexander. No words passed between them, but something lingered. A chance. A beginning. Money can vanish. Fame can fade. But the will to live and the love that binds us will always endure. If you believe in the power of love and forgiveness, share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story that speaks to your heart. She gave birth alone. In a stark white room filled with the sharp scent of antiseptic, her trembling hands searched for something, someone to hold on to. But all she found were the distant faces of nurses and doctors. And him? He was 8,000 miles away, seated in a lavish boardroom, signing a $50 million deal. In that moment, she understood. To him, work would always matter more than family. She swallowed her tears, cradled the newborn against her chest, and made herself a vow. Never again would she need him. 9 months later, her heart had hardened. She chose to leave him forever. No more hope. No more waiting. But then, when fate brought them face to face, the baby turned toward him. Wide, shining eyes lit up, and, for the very first time, smiled. Time itself seemed to stop. He froze. She ached. Could a single fragile smile heal everything, or only cut the wound deeper? Would you forgive a man who only shows up when it's almost too late? Tell us in the comments what you would do. Marcus Reed had signed billion-dollar contracts without hesitation. His signature alone could shift skylines, raise towers, and bury competitors. In boardrooms across Manhattan, his hand was steady, precise, unshaken by pressure. Yet today, inside this courthouse, it betrayed him. He sat at the plaintiff's table, the divorce papers resting in a leather folder before him. His fingers pressed against the edge, but they trembled slightly, refusing the control he demanded. These pages were not figures, not clauses, not acquisitions. They were the quiet burial of 4 years, reduced to legal terms and empty lines for signatures. His attorney whispered something about process and efficiency. He nodded, though he barely heard her. All he could hear was the hollow sound of his own breathing. This was no merger to be closed, no victory to be claimed. It was a confession in ink. Proof of indifference, proof of absence. Marcus straightened his suit jacket and checked his watch. 13 minutes early, as always. But time felt heavier here, each second stretching, mocking him. For the first time in his empire-building life, the man who conquered markets could not conquer the shaking in his own hands. The courthouse corridor moved with restless rhythm. Attorneys hurried past, clutching case files like armor. Families crowded the wooden benches, their whispers layered over the sharp staccato of heels striking marble floors. The air smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. Marcus noticed none of it. He sat still, shoulders squared, but his chest tightened with every beat of his heart. His focus narrowed, cutting out the noise until all that remained was the pulsing reminder of why he was here. On the wall above the clerk's desk, a clock ticked loudly, measuring the distance between his choice and its consequence. He glanced at his watch. 2:47 p.m., 13 minutes early, exactly as planned. He had built his life on punctuality, on discipline, on arriving before others so he could never be caught unprepared. But this was not preparation. This was waiting for the end of something he had once promised would last forever. Around him, life continued without pause. Strangers debated custody rights. A clerk shuffled stacks of forms. Yet, Marcus felt apart, an island in a storm he had created himself. The courthouse was full of voices. Still, he heard only the echo of his own silence. 4 years ago, love had filled their home. 2 years of warmth, of laughter, of small moments stitched together like silk. Naomi's hand in his, dinners that stretched long into the night, promises whispered when the city outside never slept. Then came the silence. 2 years of indifference, of distance measured not in miles but in minutes ignored. Missed dinners, missed calls, apologies left unsaid. The warmth cooled into habit. The laughter dissolved into quiet resentment. Now the evidence sat in his folder. 4 years, divided cleanly, 2 of joy, 2 of abandonment. The divorce papers were not just a document. They were a record of failure, a ledger of love that had been withdrawn without notice. Marcus told himself this was inevitable, that people grew apart, that ambition required sacrifice. But ambition had not warned him of this hollow weight. Ambition had not told him that success in towers and contracts could mean ruin inside his own home. The marriage was already gone. What remained was ceremony, an official burial in fluorescent light. He lowered his gaze to the papers again. 4 years together, and nothing left but ink. The heavy oak door creaked open behind him. Marcus did not turn at first. Years of negotiation had trained him to ignore distractions, to stay fixed on the task before him, but the silence that followed was different. Soft footsteps crossed the floor, familiar, controlled. They reached the threshold of the courtroom, and then he heard a voice, steady, gentle, but carrying weight enough to break through every defense he had left. Naomi. She stood framed in the doorway, holding a small bundle against her chest. Elijah, their son, 9 months old, his hair dark, his eyes unmistakably reed eyes, the same steel gray that had stared down boardrooms and bent competitors into submission, now blinking wide and innocent at the world. Naomi's expression held no anger. That was gone, burned away months ago. What remained was resignation, quiet strength built from doing everything alone. She shifted Elijah in her arms, steady and practiced. The courtroom, buzzing seconds before, fell still. Every gaze fixed on the fragile picture at the door. A woman, a child, and a man who had never shown up. For Marcus, the silence was a verdict. Marcus had known of the child. He had seen the hospital bills forwarded by his assistant. He had ignored the ultrasound pictures that appeared in his inbox. He had even skimmed the insurance forms, scrolling past them like junk mail. But this was the first time he faced the truth in flesh and breath. Elijah's eyes met his, steel gray. The same eyes Marcus had used to dominate negotiations, to silence rivals across mahogany tables. Now, reflected back in miniature, they stripped him bare. The child reached out, tiny fingers curling around the fabric of Naomi's sweater. Unaware of the storm his presence had created, unaware that his very existence shattered the armor of a man who thought himself unshakable. Marcus swallowed hard. His heart pounded against his ribs. This was no abstract obligation, no invoice, no digital reminder. This was blood, bone, and a gaze that carried his own reflection. For a moment, time seemed to hold still. It was not the judge, not the attorneys, not the silence of the courtroom that bound him. It was that look, the undeniable mirror that forced Marcus to see himself, and everything he had chosen to ignore. Judge Marlowe cleared his throat. His eyes moved from Naomi's calm face to the restless child in her arms, then to Marcus, pale and rigid. The courtroom, usually brisk with routine, felt heavy with something unspoken. "This case," the judge said slowly, "presents complexities that cannot be rushed." He set the file aside. "We will recess for 15 minutes. I suggest you use the time wisely." The gavel struck once, sharp against the silence. Marcus did not rise at once. His body remained seated, but his thoughts scattered. The courtroom emptied around him. Attorneys whispering, clerks gathering papers, spectators filing out. Yet he stayed motionless, staring at the folder of divorce papers as if it belonged to someone else. 15 minutes. It was nothing in the span of empire building. Deals took months, sometimes years, but 15 minutes now felt like a lifetime compressed, a test he had no strategy for. For the first time in his life, Marcus Reed, the man who commanded entire skylines, felt powerless. Not because of money, not because of reputation, but because love and loss sat only a few steps away, and he had no script to follow. The marble corridor stretched long and sterile. Marcus followed Naomi's figure, her steps steady, her grip on Elijah firm. The buzz of other families drifted around them, but her voice cut sharper than any noise. "I gave birth alone," she said, not looking at him. 36 hours of pain, fear, and you? You were in Los Angeles, signing a contract." Her words struck with precision. No shouting, just truth, delivered plainly. "I chose life," Naomi continued, adjusting Elijah against her shoulder. "You chose money." Marcus opened his mouth, but no answer came quickly. He had faced senators, investors, hostile boards. He had always had the perfect line. Here, nothing sounded right. Naomi stopped near a bench. She looked at him at last, her eyes steady, not cruel, only final. "Do you understand what that means? When I needed you most, you were absent. Not for a day, for months." Elijah fussed softly, and she rocked him with practiced ease. The child calmed in her arms. Marcus's throat tightened. He had no deal to offer, no figure to present, only the heavy knowledge that every word she spoke was true. Naomi's voice grew quieter, but each word cut deeper. "I sent you messages when I heard his heartbeat for the first time. You never replied. I called when the doctor warned of complications. Your assistant answered. I texted when he kicked inside me. You marked it as read." Her gaze did not waver. "I labored for hours, Marcus. Alone. I prayed you would walk through the hospital door. Even then, even after all your excuses, I believed you might show up. But you didn't. Not once." Every detail landed like a blow. Ultrasound pictures ignored. Voicemails left unheard. Photos of her swollen belly sent into silence. Marcus felt each memory like a knife turned slowly. He remembered. He remembered every notification. He had seen them, yes, but he had filed them away as if they were nothing urgent. Naomi shifted Elijah again, her arms strong but weary. "Do you know what it feels like?" she whispered. "To bring life into the world, while the one who promised to love you is thousands of miles away, chasing another signature?" Marcus lowered his eyes. For the first time, shame burned hotter than pride. At last, Marcus spoke, his voice rough, too low at first. "I was building something," he said. "For us, for him, a future no one could take away." Naomi laughed. Not cruel, but broken. The sound echoed in the sterile hall, colder than anger. "For us?" she repeated. "No, Marcus. For you. Your towers, your deals, your endless race for more. None of that kept me warm at night. None of that held my hand through the fear. And tell me, did Elijah have a father while you built your empire?" Her eyes shone, not with tears but with the steady fire of someone who had survived without him. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself, to explain flights, deadlines, shareholders, but the words turned to ash in his mouth. He saw Elijah's face, pressed against Naomi's sweater, secure in her arms, and not in his. Naomi's voice softened, but the edge remained. "You don't need to tell me about futures, Marcus. I live in the present. And in the present, our son only knows one parent." The truth left him silent. Elijah shifted in Naomi's arms, his small head pressing against her chest. He made soft, babbling sounds, half-formed syllables that carried no meaning and yet filled the hallway with life. One tiny hand stretched outward, patting against Naomi's sweater, gripping the fabric with instinctive need. That hand was small, fragile, yet it anchored her completely. Marcus stood a few feet away. The distance was nothing in space, but everything in truth. Between them stretched years of absence, months of silence, choices that had favored contracts over cradle. The divide felt like a chasm, and he was stranded on the wrong side. He watched as Elijah turned his face upward, eyes bright and unclouded, searching for nothing more than warmth and safety, and he realized that this child had already chosen his center of gravity. Naomi was the axis. Marcus was a shadow. His throat tightened. He could not deny Elijah. He could not argue with resemblance. Every feature was a reminder. The sharp chin, the gray eyes, the stubborn set of his mouth. Proof written not in ink, but in blood. The child existed. The child belonged. And Marcus had been a stranger to his own son. Elijah stirred again, restless in the quiet hall. His eyes flicked from Naomi's face to Marcus's, as if measuring the distance. Then, without warning, his lips curled. A smile, small, brief, but real. Marcus froze. That smile, innocent and undeserved, struck harder than any boardroom defeat. For 9 months he had been absent, faceless, a name only on bills. Yet here, this child looked at him and found no enemy. Only possibility. His chest constricted. He felt something unfamiliar, raw, and almost unbearable. He had seen victory smiles across tables, had accepted handshakes worth fortunes, but never this, never a gift so unearned. Naomi glanced at him. She said nothing, but the flicker in her eyes revealed the cruelty of grace. The baby smiled at the man who had not been there, the man who had missed every first, and yet the child's innocence offered what Marcus himself could not give: forgiveness without words. For the first time the fortress of Marcus Reed cracked, And in that single smile, he saw both judgment and redemption. It was fragile. It was fleeting. But it shattered him all the same. Back inside the courtroom, silence settled like dust. Judge Marlowe lifted his file again, ready to continue. Naomi adjusted Elijah on her lap, prepared for the inevitable. Marcus sat, rigid, the papers before him waiting for his signature. Then, his voice broke the stillness. "Your Honor," he said, standing. His tone was rough, uncertain. I need time. 30 days. To learn what it means to be a father. To prove I am not only a man of contracts, but of commitments." The words startled even himself. The judge raised a brow. Attorneys shifted in surprise. The courtroom seemed to pause, caught off guard by a billionaire begging for something that money could not buy. Marcus's eyes moved to Elijah, who stared back with curious calm. The child cooed softly, as if answering. "I ask," Marcus continued, "for 30 days before this marriage is buried forever. 30 days to stand, not as a businessman, but as a father." The gavel did not fall. Instead, the weight of the room hung in the air. A plea had been made, and everyone knew it was no ordinary request. Naomi's gaze did not soften. She looked at Marcus, then at the judge, then down at Elijah, whose hand now tugged at her sweater. 30 days, she said slowly. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "But understand me, Marcus. This is not a game. This is not a performance to win sympathy. If you fail, every door closes, permanently." Her warning fell heavy, not with anger, but with finality. Marcus nodded once. His throat was dry, but he forced himself to meet her eyes. He saw no forgiveness there, no spark of the woman he had first loved. Only guarded resolve, earned through nights alone and days of carrying more than her share. The judge leaned back, hands folded. "The court will allow it. 30 days, he confirmed. Naomi turned her attention back to Elijah, pressing her cheek gently to his head. The child squirmed, then settled. Marcus remained standing. The words echoed in his mind. 30 days. Not enough to erase 9 months. Not enough to erase years. But it was all he had been given, and he knew it was the last chance he would ever get. The session ended. Papers shuffled. Voices murmured. Marcus left the courtroom in a daze. Outside, his Tesla waited. The leather interior welcomed him with familiar luxury, yet it felt sterile, foreign. He sat behind the wheel, motionless. His phone vibrated against the console. A storm of notifications, missed calls from executives, emails about overseas markets, texts demanding urgent attention, the pulse of the empire he had built. He stared at the screen. His hand hovered. Then, with a quiet breath, he pressed the button and shut it all down. The silence that followed was almost violent. No buzzing, no ringing, no reminders of what the world wanted from him. For the first time in years, there was nothing but his own thoughts. He leaned back, eyes closed. Images flooded him. Naomi's steady stare, Elijah's smile, the judge's words. 30 days. The empire could wait. The skyscrapers would stand without him. But the fragile thread holding him to his family was fraying fast. And in that silence, Marcus Reed understood. Power had never made him weaker than this moment of choice. The drive back through Manhattan felt endless. Skyscrapers rose like monuments to everything he had conquered. Yet, Marcus saw only empty glass and steel. He thought of the penthouse perched above Central Park, the marble floors polished by strangers, the paintings chosen by consultants, the wine cellar stocked with bottles he never opened. He remembered the parties. Flashing cameras, laughter that never reached the eyes, handshakes sealed with champagne, deals signed that broke records, numbers that made headlines. He had stood at the center of it all, untouchable. But now the memories rang hollow. The applause had faded. The fortune, the recognition, the power, none of it had been present when Naomi was alone in the delivery room. None of it had held Elijah through nights of fever. The empire had crowned him king, but the throne was empty. The wealth, the fame, the relentless drive, it had bought him silence where love should have been. Marcus gripped the wheel tighter, realizing that success without witnesses, without family, without meaning, was not success at all. It was a gilded cage, and for the first time, he wanted out. 3 days later, Marcus stood outside a baby store on Madison Avenue. His suit was pressed, his shoes polished, yet his hands trembled. At exactly 7, the doors opened. A woman with silver curls greeted him kindly. "Can I help you?" Marcus hesitated. The words tasted strange on his tongue. "I need everything. For a 9-month-old. I don't know where to start." Her eyes softened. She led him through aisles of diapers, bottles, formula, car seats, and tiny clothes. She explained sizes, feeding schedules, routines. She showed him how to hold a bottle, how to test water on his wrist, how to recognize hunger cues. He listened intently, scribbling notes like a student cramming for an exam. The billionaire who once dictated billion-dollar contracts now stood humbled by pacifiers and teething rings. By the time he left, his car overflowed with supplies. But it wasn't the purchases that mattered. It was the act of beginning. Marcus realized fatherhood could not be bought in bulk. It had to be lived, messy, uncertain, and one careful step at a time. And for the first time he allowed himself to try. The pediatric clinic smelled of disinfectant and Cheerios. Pastel walls lined with painted animals tried to calm restless children. Marcus arrived early, leather notebook in hand, filled with questions he had researched late into the night. When Naomi entered with Elijah, the air shifted. He stood, awkward but eager, as though approaching an unfamiliar stage. Dr. Holloway examined Elijah with practiced hands. She weighed him, measured him, checked his reflexes. Elijah squirmed, then cried out when the needle pierced his skin. The sound tore through Marcus. He had faced hostile boardrooms, international scandals, crises worth millions. None had struck like this, a child's cry, sharp and small. Naomi soothed Elijah instantly, her touch calming, her voice steady. Marcus felt useless beside her, a spectator to a bond already formed. Dr. Holloway turned to him. "Your son doesn't need luxury, Mr. Reed. He needs you, not once in a while, every day." Marcus nodded. The words landed harder than any lecture. For once, the mentor he needed was not a CEO, not a strategist, but a doctor reminding him of the simplest truth. Presence mattered more than power. Saturday morning, Marcus stood at Naomi's door. She opened it slowly, surprise flickering across her face. Elijah clung to her leg, then noticed Marcus. "Duh! Duh!" the child babbled, reaching forward. Marcus froze. The word struck deeper than any accolade. His throat tightened as he bent down, letting Elijah grasp his fingers with surprising strength. Naomi handed him a diaper bag. "Everything is labeled," she said. "He usually naps at noon. If he cries, hold him. Don't panic." Marcus nodded, carrying Elijah into his penthouse for the first time. The skyscraper suddenly felt too large, too silent. He tried to follow instructions. He warmed a bottle, too hot at first, then cooled it awkwardly. He played with blocks, clumsy but persistent, catching them as Elijah threw them with glee. He hummed nonsense songs when Elijah grew fussy, rocking until the small head rested against his chest. Every step was foreign, every action imperfect. Yet Elijah laughed, babbled, and finally drifted into sleep. Marcus stared down at his son, realizing fatherhood was not about skill, but about staying. And he was staying. The penthouse was quiet. Lights dim, city hum muffled by thick glass. Elijah slept against Marcus's chest, small breaths rising and falling. Marcus sat in the rocking chair he had assembled himself, staring at the miracle of weight in his arms. He leaned down, voice breaking into a whisper. "I'm sorry," he said. The words cracked. "I wasn't there when you came into this world. I wasn't there for your mother when she needed me most. But I am here now. I will not leave again." He pressed a kiss against Elijah's dark hair. His eyes burned, but he let the tears fall freely, unhidden, unashamed. Unbeknownst to him, Naomi stood at the doorway. She had come quietly, checking in after hours away. She stopped, frozen, as she heard his words. Her eyes blurred. She saw not the cold magnate who once chose contracts over family, but a man undone by the innocence of a child. She said nothing. She only watched as Marcus held Elijah tighter, whispering promises that were not for her, not for anyone else, only for the boy who had saved him. The clock struck midnight when Marcus's phone shattered the silence. He slipped out from the rocking chair, careful not to wake Elijah. On the other end, his assistant's voice trembled. "Mr. Reed, the Los Angeles contract, $200 million on the line. It's collapsing. The board insists you fly out tonight." Marcus's chest tightened. For years, these were the calls he lived for. The adrenaline of crisis, the power to swoop in and save everything. But tonight, something was different. He glanced at the crib where Elijah now slept soundly, one small hand curled against his cheek. The boy's breathing was steady, unaware that his father's empire might be crumbling. The voice pressed again, urgent. "Sir, the Koreans won't proceed without you. If we lose this, our credibility is gone." Marcus's hand hovered above his suitcase. The private jet was ready. The board was waiting. His entire identity was bound up in deals like this, but his son was in the next room. For the first time, Marcus felt the weight of two worlds colliding. One he had built with money, and one that had been given to him in the form of a child. Naomi answered her phone groggily, her voice edged with resignation. "Another crisis?" Marcus hesitated. "The Los Angeles deal. $200 million. They want me on a plane now." Her silence was sharp, then came the words like a knife. "There's always a deal, Marcus. Always something more important than us. But this time, you choose. Money or your son." The ultimatum cut deeper than the board's threats. It wasn't about contracts or shareholders. It was about being a father. He looked again at Elijah, sleeping without worry, as though the world were safe. And he realized that every time he had chosen work, he had told Naomi and Elijah the opposite, that they were not enough. Naomi's voice softened, but only slightly. "You can't have both tonight. You either fly to save a contract, or you stay to prove you're more than a businessman." The line was quiet. His heart pounded. He had faced billion-dollar negotiations, hostile takeovers, ruthless competitors, yet no decision had ever felt as heavy as this. This was not a boardroom choice. It was a choice about who he was. Marcus inhaled slowly, the weight of Naomi's words pressing against him. He turned toward the crib again. Elijah shifted in his sleep, lips parting into a faint sigh, the innocence of trust embodied in that tiny frame. He raised the phone to his ear. "Listen carefully," Marcus said, his voice steady now. "We may lose this contract, but contracts come back. Deals can be rebuilt. If I lose my son, I can never replace that." The assistant stammered. "But, sir, $200 million? "I said no," Marcus cut in, firmer. "Find another way. I'm not leaving." He hung up. His hands shook, but not from fear, from release. Marcus sat back down, letting the silence return. For the first time he had chosen love over profit, presence over prestige. In the dark, he whispered to his son again, "You are worth more than everything I've ever built." The deal might collapse. His board might revolt. His reputation might shatter, but tonight, Marcus knew he had made the only decision that mattered. The next morning, the boardroom buzzed with anger. 12 executives sat around the mahogany table, their voices sharp with accusation. "You abandoned us in crisis," one shouted. $200 million evaporated overnight." Marcus stood at the head, shoulders square. For years, he would have apologized, promised to fix everything. Today, he did not flinch. "I made a choice," he said calmly, "and I'll tell you why. A company cannot be strong if its leader is broken at home. Stability in business starts with stability in family." The room fell silent. Another director sneered. "Are you suggesting family is more important than shareholders?" "Yes," Marcus said, without hesitation. "Because when leaders sacrifice everything personal for profit, they burn out. And when they burn out, companies collapse. What we need is not endless sacrifice, but sustainability." Some faces hardened. Others softened, considering. Marcus pressed on. "I will not abandon my son for a contract. If that makes me unfit to lead in your eyes, so be it. But know this, a man who stands for nothing but money will eventually lose even that." The fallout was swift. The Los Angeles deal collapsed. Headlines screamed of a billion-dollar empire in jeopardy. Investors whispered about replacements. Marcus braced for ruin. Yet, something strange happened. The very decision that seemed reckless sparked a different conversation. A journalist ran the headline, "The CEO who chose family over fortune." The story spread across networks, carried by mothers, fathers, workers tired of relentless sacrifice. Social media exploded with support. Parents called him brave. Families thanked him for saying aloud what so many felt, that no deal was worth missing the lives of those you love. By week's end, the company's stock, expected to plummet, began to climb. Analysts called it the humanity premium. Investors believed in a leader who could see beyond numbers. Marcus read the headlines in quiet disbelief. He had lost a contract, yes, but somehow, by choosing his child, he had gained something more. For the first time in his career, success was measured not in dollars, but in respect, in trust, and in love. Central Park hummed with life on a spring afternoon. Children laughed on the playground, dogs tugged at leashes, joggers moved down the paths. Marcus stood behind a swing set, pushing Elijah higher and higher. The boy was now 2, his small legs kicking the air, his voice echoing across the park. "Daddy! Higher, Daddy!" Marcus laughed, steady hands guiding the swing. The sound of that single word, Daddy, was worth more than every deal he had ever signed. On a nearby bench, Naomi sat with a book in her lap, though her eyes rarely left them. Her smile was quiet, content, the kind that carried both memory and forgiveness. The man who once ruled boardrooms now found his throne in the simple rhythm of a swing. Each push was a promise. Each laugh from Elijah was a crown. 2 years ago, Marcus Reed was the billionaire who nearly lost everything. Now he was simply a father, and that title was enough. Evenings looked different now. Marcus no longer sat beneath glass ceilings staring at spreadsheets past midnight. He no longer lived on flights and conference calls. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the floor of a modest living room, holding a book with worn pages. Elijah climbed into his lap, eyes wide, waiting for the story to begin. "Once upon a time," Marcus read, his voice soft, his son leaning closer with each word. Naomi passed by the doorway, pausing to watch them. The sight carried more weight than any title Marcus had held. He was no longer CEO in full command. He had stepped back, shared power, learned trust. Some called it weakness. For Marcus, it was freedom. When he closed the book and kissed Elijah's forehead, he realized this was his greatest trade. He had exchanged contracts for bedtime stories, skyscrapers for laughter, billions for belonging. And for once, it was a deal where he had gained far more than he gave away. One evening, after Elijah had fallen asleep, Marcus and Naomi sat together in the quiet kitchen. The city outside still glittered, but inside there was only soft lamplight and unspoken history. Marcus broke the silence. "For years, I believed success was measured in towers, in contracts, in numbers printed on glossy reports." Naomi's eyes searched his face, waiting. "But I was wrong," he continued, voice low. "I know that now. Success is not what you build in stone or steel. Success is when your son looks at you and calls you Daddy." The words hung between them, simple and raw. Naomi blinked back tears. She had heard promises before, too many broken, but this felt different. Not grand, not rehearsed, just truth spoken in its plainest form. For the first time she let her hand rest gently on his. Not forgiveness yet, but a step toward something they could build again. Summer sunlight melted into evening. The three of them sat together on a bench near the ice cream truck. Elijah held a cone with sprinkles, chocolate smearing his cheeks. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. For years, that sound had ruled his life, demanding obedience. He reached for it, then stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he powered it off. Naomi noticed. Her smile deepened. Elijah giggled, offering his sticky cone for them both to share. For the first time in decades, Marcus felt truly free. Not free because of wealth or authority, but free because he was no longer chained to it. Free to taste ice cream with his son. Free to sit in silence with Naomi. Free to exist without always chasing the next deal. The world was still loud, still urgent. But in that moment, all he heard was laughter. All he saw was love. Marcus Reed once had everything. Wealth, fame, power. Yet he almost lost the one treasure that truly mattered. The right to live in love and to be loved in return. But he changed. He chose family over fortune, presence over profit. And in that choice, he discovered what no empire could ever buy: belonging, forgiveness, and a love that endures. If you were Naomi, would you forgive him? Would you open your heart again to a man who once chose money over you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story that may move your heart, stir your soul, and remind you of what truly matters. Marcus was once a billionaire in numbers. Now, in love, he is rich beyond measure.